Brian, how tough is it to be a talented young wide receiver who could probably be starting at maybe different Big Ten schools, but has to bide their time here because you guys are so talented? How difficult is that on a young wide receiver?
It's probably a question for them. I mean, I think that at times it can be. I think that we have a pretty humble group. I think if you're a pretty humble guy, it's probably not too difficult. You know, there's a lot of things you need to work on. Just because you're able to play other places, that doesn't give you any justification for playing where you're at. So I think they have a pretty good head on their shoulders, and they've been raised by great parents, and they understand there's a process to this. And but that being said, I don't want to assume. It's a good question for them, I think, if you ask me. So.
There's been a lot of great wide receiving cores that have come through here. You run a couple yourself. Do you ever stop and think, wow, I'm coaching perhaps the best wide receiving core to ever come through here?
I pinch myself and can't believe I'm the receiver coach at Ohio State. I'll leave it at that. I think that's pretty surreal to me. More times than you'd probably think, and I don't take it for granted. I think it hits me a lot when I'm coming off the field. I think sometimes in the hustle and bustle, you kind of lose track of that, and you're more focused on executing and, you know, making sure everyone understands what's going on. But there's definitely times, you know, on game days or pregame and opportunities on Monday. I mean, there's times throughout the week all the time that it kind of hits me in the face. So, you know, it makes me smile to this day, as you can tell. But, you know, for me, it's not even about the group. It's just the opportunity I have every day. So.
Yeah, we talked to Marvin Harrison Jr. for the first time last week, and he was very mature in his approach about, I'm just here to get better. I'm not worried about playing time. What have you seen from him, and how close is he to having that kind of, he's ready?
Yeah, Marvin, he's going to be a great player. Already is a really good player, and he has a very bright future. Yeah, I think the fact of all the things you just said is why he's where he's at. If he didn't have that approach, if he didn't have a bigger picture, if he doesn't want to learn every day, if he doesn't want to bring it, he wouldn't be where he's at. So there's a direct correlation between those two things. He's so good because of, and that's not going to change. I think he knows that. I think, again, raised by great parents, dad was on him from a young age, and you know, that's very evident. And you know, I think that's what I would say is one of the best pleasures so far, and I have to keep crediting their parents, is that, you know, they're great young men. They get great grades. They do everything right. You know, Jaden and Marvin and Emeka, and I never hear from their parents besides, Coach, how you doing? Like, that's it. And it's a direct reflection, I think, with them sometimes. And again, we're very blessed in the room. We have a great group of guys, and they work really hard, and they've been pretty productive. And we have to keep going up, but I think that there's a direct correlation with how well, you know, just the overall atmosphere is. You with me? So you talk about Marv, but same with Emeka and same with Jaden. It's been a lot of fun that way.
Yeah, how close are those guys, Jaden and Emeka?
Yeah, they're doing a great job, and I think I hope they understand there's a bigger picture to it all, and I think they do. Everybody wants to contribute. I mean, Marv's done a great job over the last week. Mech has the whole season. Jaden stepped in a lot when we had some injuries, so may not be as much on game day, but throughout practice, I think Coach would tell you how much he's improved. And again, the group is awesome, and it's so much fun to coach. And I guess I can't emphasize that enough. But everyone's doing a really good job.
First, the amount of reps CJ and Jackson got last year as second teamers, since they weren't necessarily getting on the field, is that showing up now with how much more involved Jackson's been in the last couple of weeks?
Well, I think last year they didn't get almost any reps. I mean, I think the ones, you know, had to play almost every game last year. So, like, we were way behind the eight ball with that going into the season. I think the maturity of those men and others, as we've progressed through the season, that's what's showing up now. I think early on was the direct reflection of having so many guys play so much without being able to play last year because of the circumstances. So yeah, I think that to answer your question, where we're at now was still, you know, the lingering effect, I think, a little bit of the previous year. And it's not just us, it's probably across the country. It may be a little less than those that had a lot of guys come back and be able to maximize their fifth or sixth or eighth year, whatever it is. So we didn't have a lot of that. And, you know, a lot of the good, you know, a lot of the maybe the higher the programs would have that. So there's a lot of people that are growing throughout the season, and you kind of see that now. You know, trying to compare game 9 to game 1, it's probably a pretty. We hope to think it's a stark change. So.
And then one recruiting question: when you go big on wide receiver classes, when you have multiple guys, do you want similar body types between those guys, or different type, like variety in the types of guys you go out there?
Typically, you want. Well, first of all, I would say I never want to pigeonhole a young guy, young player of what he can and can't do. I want guys that can do everything, and I don't really believe in gadget players. I think it's you're a receiver, and so some of the learning curve's different for others, but I would say that you definitely want different sizes and kind of a prototype in these kind of spots, and where's the room at, and who's leaving, and what skill set do you need to bring in, and so although Chris might run really, really fast, in a straight line. Jackson plays at a very high speed. It's just different, but you can play him in any position. And I think it's a good understanding of, again, what you have, what do you need, what's leaving. That constant variable is what you want to keep mindful of.
Brian, it seems pretty clear that you have the best top 3 in the country to work with at receiver. Which one has the highest grade in your room through 8 weeks?
I've never looked at that. I have not looked at that. But I think, speaking on grades, I think that, it just depends. I think a little bit plays into the game plan. I'm sure grades change as, you're at the point of attack versus not. So there's a lot of variables that go into that. But I think you guys have seen probably over the year where, whose game is it this game? And I think that's hopefully a good sign of a great offense and a great, a good room that it's hard to take away everybody, and everyone's got to be accountable when it's their day.
When you see these guys, and so like this week, Garrett and Chris didn't grade as champions, how much of a motivator is that for them? I know they want to win the game first, and then maybe grade a champion second. How, what is that like for the players? How will they respond?
I don't know. We didn't really do. I think we do champions when way back in the day, when I was on the team. But that I know probably definitely wasn't public. So the changed atmosphere around that's probably a little different. I think you should ask them, and you should let me know what they say. I'm kind of curious about that. So,
Deal.
The fact that it's public, I think, really changes the game. Absolutely, and I think that. But we have standards, and everyone, and everyone, other coaches can talk about their standards. Our standards, you can still probably grade decent, but if there was this, one of these or one of those or one of these, you're not a champion. And then there's kind of a feel to, is it your championship? It's not, across the board. It's not. It's Garrett Wilson's championship level. It's Chris Olave's championship level. So that's kind of how I go about it.
Brian, in the past, you guys have rotated a lot more at receiver than you have this year. Is that just a matter of you not wanting to take Chris, Garrett, and Jackson off the field, or is there still more that you need to see from other guys?
Well, I think that, I guess that's always a conversation. There's multiple ways to answer that, and I'm not always great at being politically correct. I would say that, there's a lot of sayings out there, but if you got 6, you don't have 2. And it's the idea of, everyone at some point, in my opinion, being a former player and knowing where I was as a junior and senior and the work I put in, like I didn't want to come off the field, and if people can see perspective on that sometimes, like one day it's going to be your opportunity, and let me know what you think. When you get in that spot, I'm going to ask you again, do you want me to take you off the field so maybe a younger guy can play, And to me, I think it's past that. If I'm pulling a player off the field, you have to be able to come in and compete at that exact same level, or I'm doing disservice to the O-line, the running back, the quarterback. Like, that's not fair. Like, it's nothing on any other player, but it's just, you're going to start pulling center every 3 series and put a different center in, and you're going to start pulling. And so, why not? Well, because, so – I think there's a correlation to that. It couldn't just be, one or the other. I know in a running back world, maybe, Coach Alford talk on maybe it's the hits on the body, so there's a little more thoughts to that, but we don't live in that world. So I don't know. I mean, it's always constant conversation. It's always a topic that we'll always continue to look at and always be mindful of. But I think this year we've done a pretty good job of getting a good amount of guys in. Again, dictating on the game. But I think we've done a really good job, light years ahead of what we were able to do it last year. So really happy with that. And again, with a lot of football left, hope to continue to mature those guys. Because I know, I think a big part of the maturation for those young guys is their ability to be in the game as well. And I know that. So, there's a couple of guys who wish could have got more in. Maybe we're dinged up a little bit, so they didn't get those opportunities. But they're coming down the road.
Chris and Garrett and Jackson maybe playing a higher percentage of snaps than the starters would have a couple years ago. Is that more how much those guys have separated themselves, or is it more, that second line of guys not being as experienced as maybe you had in the past?
It's more on the kudos, more to the guys that are just there. It's nothing, no indication on the guys that are ready to go when called upon. So, again, I'm going to speak on our room and where we're at. Phenomenal room, very, very talented. Time will show, and if we ever get banged up, you'll see. So at this point, we've been pretty darn healthy, and but I know we're going to need all those guys to do this the right way, the path we want to be on. Something will show up, and we'll be ready to handle it as a group.
I want to be able to get everyone in, so just one question per person. Let's go, Nate,
One?
Yours are usually pretty long-winded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll ask my two in one question. You have a unique perspective because you get to look at the defensive backs every day when you watch video, and you get to look at the quarterback every day. Give me the progress of both of those, the unit and the quarterback, C.J. Stroud, from day one to now. What you see on video.
I think what you guys see is what we see. I think that, I think from day one, I've always thought really highly of CJ. I think his poise is the one thing that always jumps out at me. And I think his ability to, flush a play and move on, or great play, let it go, like no indication on the next play, is a very valuable trait that I think he has, and it comes with poise and prep throughout the week and all those things. And so, again, the more he can play and the more he can see, the better he's going to become. And I think the same goes true with the defensive backs. I've always been impressed with those guys, and I think that, again, the more they can be on the field, the more they'll continue to improve. There's no change there with the earlier conversation we had of last year and compared to this year. And but just call it what it always is. When you start a season, we always say the same. Oh, everyone, the best learning is from game 1 to game 2. I bet you guys will hear that next year, and then I bet you we'll talk about how, game 9, we better not be as good as we were at game 1, or we're going to be an issue. So we're taking all those steps. The challenge now isn't to be better than game 1. The challenge now is to be better than the most previous game. And so although we're in a much better spot, we probably think we still have ways to go if we want to get to where we are in, 4 to 5 weeks. So, are we mature enough to take that step? We're going to find out. But, again, there's a process that Coach talks about, to be able to prepare, compete, and then learn. And that's going to happen every week. And, if we prepare at a high level, we're getting a little better. And then we go compete, we learn, and we can learn from it. We'll keep taking steps. And I think that's across the board, not just the quarterback room and not just the DB room.
second row, middle, Nathan.
You had talked in the preseason about Julian Fleming finally being healthy and kind of how excited you were to kind of get to see him let loose a little bit, and that obviously hasn't been able to happen physically. Just, I guess, how is he handling that mentally, and what are you seeing from him?
Oh, I'm sure at times it's been pretty hard. I think that with how competitive he is and all the stresses that come in this common world, in this daily world, I think it's probably difficult. He should probably touch on it more. But that being said, I think he's feeling a lot better now, and we'll see what this week holds. And but he had a great camp, and you could see everything going. And guys would probably talk. Jackson even hit on it. He comes back and he's feeling better, and he's been good and made a couple of plays, and we all just kind of look around at each other like, did everyone see that? So, we'll just keep progressing, and we'll I think we'll be in a good spot. But I'm sure it's been pretty frustrating. If it's not been frustrating, you're not a competitor. So I'm sure it's been pretty frustrating.
Second row, left.
Brian, Denzel Burke said last week that you were kind of the first guy from Ohio State who came to or talked to him to recruit him. and then he told you he wanted to play DB.
Yeah.
I'm wondering
my bubble.
how often that happens to you, that a receiver tells you wants to play DB, and what did you think of Denzel as a receiver?
That was the first and only so far. Typically, I have a feel for it. You'll get some athletes that do both, and I guess they probably tell both coach, no, coach, I want to play offense. No, coach, I want to play defense. Okay, well. So, but Denzel hit me right in the teeth. It was good. So I called him up. I was like, man, you're a good player. I want to get to know you. But then sometimes as you're getting to know somebody, over a longer conversation, he was electric, great energy. So we kept talking, and he was like, I was like, yeah. So, basically thinking, offering the guy, I want to offer you as a receiver. He goes, well, coach, I appreciate it, but I'm going to be a DB. I said, well, let me connect you with Coach Combs. But yeah, I mean, so the ball skills were always there. He was a really good high school receiver, and it was pretty cool. That'll be a cool story down the road. We'll see how that all plays out. But I'm sure you guys have talked to him. He's a great young man, and pretty studious too in his academics, and a great Buckeye so far. So he'll keep that up, I'm sure.
Brian, how would you characterize the route running of the guys in your room right now, and how do you guys sort of hold each other accountable on that? Do you point out great instances of it? Do you point out when maybe a guy didn't do it right? Just where's this group?
Very capable. I think that we're a little peaks and valleys sometimes. I think that we're capable of being cleaner. I think we've been cleaner, and I think that the details at which we operate are what separate people. I try to talk to the guys like, there's I don't know, 120 some programs and 2 or 3 receivers on the field every time, if not more, and there's I don't know, 500 receivers in college football running curl routes. Where do you stack your curl route up compared to somebody else's? So it's not about that you run the route, it's how you run the route. And if you don't, it's not that you block, it's how you block. It's not so. If we try to keep that mindset, and I think sometimes you find ourselves getting lazy. I think that sometimes we find some success when we don't have to give 100% per se, and we're still productive. And that's the biggest nemesis of greatness is finding productivity when you don't have to give it your all, because you can find your lull showing up and it'll catch you at the worst time. So we continue to try to train it. It's an everyday conversation. It battles human, tendencies to just want to relax, and that's just what we want to do. The reason why the Apple, the iPhone was created is because they found a lazy person to design it so they could find the easiest way to open it and the easiest way to operate it. That's why it's such a great device, because we're so used to easy and we want easy. So as athletes, it's no different. So trying not to train that and trying to push through that and hold yourself accountable. Coach, I just went for 80. I know, but that was a terrible route. So if you can't grab that, then I guarantee you the terrible route will show up again when you needed a good route. So always a conversation. I'm sure it's in every sport, and so right now where I rank us, I think that we've had some games where like, wow, that was really, really good. And I think competition is a little bit battle of it, right? You talk yourself into, maybe you think there's an inferior competition when it's, the level of the DB. That's just as receivers. Game, play to play, quarter to quarter, drive to drive. It's always a constant, pre-snap mentality, post-snap execution. And so I grade us, coming off of that game, I grade us as, a C right now. I think we're capable of being A+, but we got to make sure we rebite on that, and it shows up this week.
Ryan, going back to that point, the outside looking in, it looks like in the last handful of months we've seen a maturation process. So some of the guys like Garrett Wilson, for example, just on the field maybe being a little bit more of a leader-ish in that role than what maybe he wasn't a year ago. How much of that is based on what Chris and guys like Cam Babb have done for him, and how much of it is just Garrett buying into what you're just talking about?
I'm sure it's a combination. I would say that, a guy that comes in as a 17 or 18-year-old that's able to play earlier than most and have that, gratification and to be on the field, I would say that you see them early, so you hold them to a standard of the fifth-year senior, but they're nowhere near close to that. So, a guy like Garrett only being in his third year, like this is the normal maturation he should have. Maybe, a little faster, a little slower, whatever. But, if it was a person that wasn't playing, he's just front and center, so we're seeing it every day, whereas the guy that's not quite there yet has the ability to kind of hide it a little bit. So that's part of it. I think that the room itself and how close they've become and how they've competed, and I would say this, and I like sharing this story because it was a really good one. In the summer, we have our workouts, and it's really not easy, but because we compete so much, but there's ways to find time to take it off. Right? You have a running workout, you're running 53s, you're crossing the field, you have a group of guys that are segmented up into different groups, but in this particular group that day I know the two, there's more guys, there's probably 3 or 4 of them, but there was 2 guys, there was Garrett and there was Emeka. And I'll never forget, these guys were running pretty good, and Garrett, was competing to always come in first, and was good. It was really good to see. Again, it's not about the time, it's about the competition with yourself, and do you want to be in first? So he went out, touched the line, and came back, and Emeka was on his heels, and we were getting close to the last 2 or 3, and those guys went after each other. Like Emeka was like, he's a freshman, just got here, and he went after Garrett, and these guys, the times were like, 15 seconds, they were coming in like 9, like it was ridiculous. And I was just sitting there watching this, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. But it's just the full conversation, right? Garrett never would have probably went that hard if it wasn't for Emeka. And Emeka never went that hard if it wasn't for Garrett. And the fact that Garrett, said no, like that's the maturation you're talking about. So I'm not saying it wouldn't have happened before, but there was something different there. And that's the exact same reason why Emeka came to Ohio State. So just seeing that all unfold and these guys push each other, and that still happens at a different degree now, it's just awesome. And so Mecca's helping him mature. Garrett, I'm sure, is helping, Mecca mature, and it's all over the room, and to have Jaden Ballard, room with Chris, and they're just doing a good job, a little at a time. And again, hopefully that kind of paints a good picture of how this is continuing to happen, and hope it keeps going.
When Ryan recruits quarterbacks, he always talks about we're seeking out that one elite trait when we're recruiting those guys. Whether it's route running, speed, hands, what's the number one trait you look for receiver-wise when you're recruiting?
I would say there's 2 that go together that aren't sacrificed either way. I would say 1, the type of person you are. If you're not, I don't mean this the wrong way. If you're not the right fit, it'll be really hard to maximize the player. You have to first have the right mental makeup, drive, desire, competitiveness, GAS factor, like all those things. And that's critical. You got to be a good dude. And I think that, for me, again, I talked about, the working hard and maximizing one's ability. That's really critical. You have all the ability in the world, but if you can't maximize it, you will be passed up. And then if you're able to maximize, a good chance you're going to hang up top, because most don't. But I also will never do the best I possibly can to bring a guy into the room that's bad for the other guys, because I told their parents, I told them who they'd be surrounded with, what kind of person that was. I'm not going to change that, and I really, really enjoy coming in and coaching every day. I don't want that to change. And if you're not the right fit, nope, I don't care how good you are. Secondly, I would say your play speed. Like, to me, you can learn a lot of things, and there's some things you probably, either you have or you don't. But I've seen guys improve their hands. I've seen guys get bigger. I've seen guys get faster. I've seen guys change of direction, get better. I've seen football IQ grow. There's just something to one's ability to maximize their current skill set. Like, do they play fast with where they're at? They do. Well, as they get faster, they'll play faster. There's nothing more alarming, in my opinion, to a fast guy that doesn't play fast, because there's a disconnect there. And maybe it's coaching, maybe at that level, I don't know. But I would say those 2 things. You don't have to be the biggest. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to be the smartest. You don't have to have the best hands. But you got to be fast enough. You got to be big enough. You got to have good enough hands. You got to have all those things, and then paired with the ability to mature and grow and be the right fit, you'll maximize all your skill set as long as you have those 2. So that's kind of a 30,000-foot view. I think I find it important, So, but again, you're not going to find somebody with all those traits. So if you don't have the first piece in the head, then it's going to be really, really difficult to maximize the young man. So,
Big picture question. I think you're one of the rising stars in this profession. And sometimes I'm more intrigued with coaches than I am with players. How difficult would it be to leave Ohio State if you felt you needed to rise up the ladder? Or I'll give you an out, or you can just say I'm too damn nosy.
we know that.
Or do you think you can fulfill whatever you want to fulfill right here?
I mean, Ohio State's my home, and and I have a strong passion here, and I loved seeing all the coach conversations and how coaches answer different questions because of all the speculations. I find it very amusing. So now I have to not screw this up. So I would say that I love it here, and it's a passion here, and all I care about is this room, and that's my main focus and my forever focus. And outside of that, I think I would be I'd be lying if I think I'm thinking outside of that, But I'm also not a person to sit here and tell you no, I'm never leaving Ohio State. I'm not saying I ever will. I probably and you said go up the ladder. Go where? This is the pinnacle of the ladder. So, and the ego at this point, unless it's pretty minimal, I think at times. Maybe other people don't think so, but I don't need the satisfaction of calling plays or whatever. I don't know what that ladder is, but to me, I'm at the pinnacle of the ladder. So, unless unless there's a relationship that I know of somebody at this spot, and again, I don't think it's even college. I don't know. That's a big question, hard to answer. All I know is I love Ohio State. My wife's from here. We live here. Love my house. I don't know. That'd be really hard. It'd be really hard to leave. I don't think that's ever really in the books. So, but the speculation's fun. I mean, to think to watch the movement in college football. Sometimes here's what's weird. Sometimes I don't think of myself as a coach yet. Still to this day, So I sit back and watch all this as a fan. Oh my God, look at all this gossip. This is hilarious, So I don't want to get caught up in the gossip. I want to be outside. I like enjoying watching it. So you guys would keep me out of it. So I know, it's just mind blowing. When did that happen? You know what I mean? I was just an assistant, and I don't even know what happened. Schmeier talked me into coming here and never left.
The trestle in your head is where your feet are. So you just.
Oh yeah, I mean, okay. So let's answer this another way. Guys come into the room, and the conversations I constantly have with my wife. I'll just, you're so darn nosy. The conversations I have with my wife, we can't imagine leaving the guys in the room. I can't even to this day. It gives me chills. Trying to walk in and tell them I'm not going to be in the room anymore. That would be really hard to do, and I don't think I can do that. And never say never, but almost chokes me up now. I can't even imagine going in there and looking at Marvin and Mac and Jaden and telling them I'm not going to be here anymore. So, low chance.
Because they're family too.
Yeah, I mean, I hang out with them more than my son, and my daughter, and I'm sure the next one on the way, and my wife. So I can't imagine it. So at this point, I'm not going to. I'm good. We're going to go keep winning football games, keep progressing, and see where these guys look in about a couple of years, and come back in and talk to you guys about them and the next ones and so on and so forth. So looking forward to that side. Yeah, well, I'm sorry about that.
Brian, what does it do for the room when you have guys like Travion and Jeremy that are doing well in the passing game? And do they ever come to you or the other guys in that room for advice on how do I run this route or what do I do?
No, they have great coaches, so they're able to rely on theirs. And, I think that, they do a great job being very multifaceted. I mean, the skill set those guys have to carry in the tight end room and the running back room is pretty impressive. I mean, the amount of banging that goes on, whether I'm in pass pro, carrying the football, that's a lot for running backs now. Tight ends, you have to run a route like a receiver and you got to block like a tackle, and I think it's pretty impressive at the level they play.